Australia is a nation of contrasts, home to a wide range of experiences that are frequently ignored. Although many people appreciate its unspoiled natural beauty and relaxed way of life, there are important social and cultural problems that both residents and foreign visitors must deal with. These are a few less talked about facets about Australia. Number 10. Social isolation and cultural insularity. Despite Australia's reputation for being a welcoming and relaxed country, many foreigners and even some Australians feel extremely alone in society. This phenomenon is especially noticeable in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, where the fast-paced way of life can make it difficult to build deep relationships. While Australians are generally courteous, newcomers frequently observe that they can be reticent, which makes it challenging to integrate into established social circles. Australia's enormous geographic size adds to the feeling of loneliness. Since public transportation is often scarce and many communities are dispersed, it can be difficult for people to interact with people outside of their immediate neighborhoods. The difficulty is made more difficult for expatriates by cultural differences and the lack of a familiar support system. Many consequently find themselves drawn to other foreigners, which may prevent them from fully assimilating into Australian society as a whole. This social isolation raises questions about mental health and community cohesion because it can exacerbate feelings of isolation and disconnection. Number 9. Economic and housing challenges. Although Australia's economy is frequently praised for its tenacity and expansion, many citizens face severe financial difficulties, especially when it comes to the cost of housing. Big cities like Melbourne and Sydney are frequently listed among the most expensive places in the world to live. Low and middle-income earners are disproportionately affected by the housing crisis brought on by the skyrocketing costs of real estate and rent. Due to the high cost of housing, many young Australians and families are forced to rely more heavily on rental properties, which frequently offer little stability or security. High immigration rates, while good for economic expansion, put more pressure on housing supply and infrastructure, exacerbating the housing crisis. The government, according to critics, has not done enough to strike a balance between the need for affordable housing and economic growth. Many Australians experience financial insecurity as a result, which fuels their frustration and disillusionment. The overall wealth of the nation and the experiences that many of its citizens have on a daily basis are drastically different because of this economic divide. Number 8. Cultural discontent. Some Australians, especially those in older generations, are beginning to feel a sense of cultural malaise despite their country's rich cultural heritage. Many people express nostalgia for a bygone era of vibrant, widely celebrated local art, music, and film. Homegrown talent is becoming less prominent as a result of the perception that international influences are overshadowing Australian culture due to the rise of globalized entertainment. This dissatisfaction with culture is frequently accompanied by a feeling of social fragmentation. Certain Australians experience a sense of disconnection from a unified national identity as communities grow increasingly diverse. As people navigate a landscape that can feel more personalized and commercialized, the decline of group movements and shared cultural experiences adds to this feeling. A cycle of cultural decline may be furthered by this disconnection, which may result in a lack of participation in regional artistic and cultural events. Number 7. Indigenous issues and political polarization. The complicated and frequently tense relationship between Indigenous Australians and the larger community was highlighted by the recent Australian Voice referendum. The referendum sought to create an advisory council for Indigenous peoples that would be recognized by the Constitution. However, its failure exposed deep divisions in the nation. Radical right-wing politics influence public opinion and discourse, dividing many Australians on the issue. Deeper problems with race, identity, and historical injustices experienced by Indigenous Australians are reflected in this political polarization. The discourses surrounding national identity that are more popular tend to overshadow the ongoing struggles for land rights, recognition, and reconciliation. Discussions regarding the future of racial relations in Australia have also been sparked by the referendum's failure, which has left many Indigenous Australians feeling excluded and demoralized. Tension-filled discussions about Indigenous rights continue to highlight how difficult it is to resolve historical grievances in the present day. Number 6. Environmental concerns and climate change. Despite having some of the most distinctive ecosystems in the world, Australia faces serious environmental problems that are made worse by climate change. Devastating floods, droughts, and bushfires have struck the nation recently. These natural disasters have had a significant impact on local communities and the environment. The Black Summer, or 2019 to 2020 bushfire season, claimed the lives of several people, destroyed homes, and devastated wildlife habitats, affecting an estimated 3 billion animals. Even with these concerning developments, debates about environmental policy and climate change can be heated. There is a discernible split in public opinion regarding climate change, despite the fact that many Australians support more aggressive action. This split is frequently influenced by political affiliations and economic interests. Australia's economy still heavily relies on the fossil fuel sector, which makes switching to renewable energy sources more difficult. This conflict between environmental sustainability and economic interests emphasizes how urgently Australia's natural heritage needs to be protected and climate change needs to be addressed. Number 5. Mental health and well-being. In Australia, mental health is becoming a more urgent issue, but it's still rarely brought up in public conversation. The stigma associated with mental health issues can discourage people from getting treatment, which raises the alarming rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reports that every year, 1 in 5 Australians suffers from a mental health illness, with young people being especially susceptible. Even though mental health services are available, access can be difficult, particularly in isolated and rural areas with limited resources. Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic has made pre-existing mental health conditions worse, which has raised demand for services. Despite initiatives to increase awareness and enhance mental health services, there is still a big gap in meeting the needs of individuals who are impacted. Greater emphasis on mental health education, community support, and accessible resources is essential to foster a healthier society. Number 4. Indigenous cultural heritage and language revitalization. The indigenous cultures of Australia are some of the oldest cultures still in existence, but they continue to face difficulties with language revitalization and cultural preservation. Due to younger generations' assimilation into mainstream Australian culture, many indigenous languages are in danger of going extinct. The loss of language reflects a deeper loss of cultural identity and legacy than just a linguistic problem. Programs to teach and preserve these languages within communities are part of the ongoing efforts to revitalize indigenous languages. Nevertheless, these programs frequently face financial and supportive challenges. In order to promote mutual respect and understanding among all Australians, it is essential to acknowledge and celebrate Indigenous cultural heritage, which includes storytelling, music, and the arts. Encouraging Indigenous voices and making sure their stories are heard can aid in bridging cultural gaps and enhancing the narrative of the country. Number 3. Education disparities. Even though Australia is renowned for having a top-notch educational system, there are still large gaps that primarily affect Indigenous students and those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Indigenous students frequently encounter structural obstacles that impede their ability to complete their education, such as greater dropout and attendance rates. The absence of culturally appropriate curricula and support networks that value and recognize Indigenous viewpoints exacerbates these issues. A cycle of disadvantage is created when children from low-income families, in addition to Indigenous students, do not always have access to high-quality educational resources. The disparity in educational attainment may eventually affect social mobility and work prospects. A comprehensive strategy that prioritizes equity in education, community engagement, and targeted funding is needed to address these disparities. By investing in the education of all Australians, the country can work towards a more inclusive and prosperous future. Number 2. Aging population and healthcare challenges. Australia's aging population is causing a demographic shift that will pose serious challenges to social services and the healthcare system. The percentage of older Australians is rising along with life expectancy, which is driving up demand for aged care facilities, healthcare services, and support networks. The need for more healthcare workers who are qualified to address the particular needs of older adults is urgent, and this demographic trend has consequences for workforce planning. Despite its overall strength, the healthcare system is under pressure with regard to financing, accessibility, and care quality. It can be difficult for many older Australians to get timely medical care, especially in rural and isolated areas where there may not be enough healthcare facilities. Additionally, the aged care sector has been scrutinized for its quality of care, particularly following high-profile inquiries that revealed systemic issues. Addressing the needs of an aging population requires a comprehensive approach that includes investment in healthcare infrastructure, workforce training, and policies that promote healthy aging and social inclusion. Number 1. Food insecurity and nutritional challenges. A large section of the population in Australia suffers from food insecurity, a problem that is frequently ignored. Even though Australia is a wealthy country with an abundance of food resources, social, geographic, and economic barriers make it difficult for many Australians to obtain wholesome food. Fresh and healthful food options have become more and more expensive for low-income families due to rising living expenses, especially in cities. Food insecurity disproportionately affects vulnerable groups like children, the elderly, and Indigenous communities. It can cause a variety of health problems, such as obesity, malnutrition, and chronic diseases. While food banks and community organizations are essential in tackling this problem, their funding is frequently insufficient, Combating food insecurity can be aided by raising awareness of the issue and supporting programs that encourage community gardens, local food production, and sustainable food systems. It is imperative to guarantee that all Australians have access to reasonably priced, healthful food in order to promote a healthier society and enhance general well-being. Recognizing and addressing these challenges is crucial for building a more equitable and resilient nation. If you liked our video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel.